Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Another name has been thrown in the hat of the 2026 California gubernatorial race. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's official. State Senate President Pro Tem Toni Atkins is running for governor of California. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says she made the announcement Friday in Balboa Park.
The San Diego Air and Space Museum was packed with supporters of Toni Atkins, one of the longest-serving elected officials in San Diego politics. She told the crowd of her humble beginnings as the daughter of a lead miner in Virginia in a home without running water. She was the first in her family to go to college, thanks to scholarships and holding down multiple jobs.
Do I think my story provides some kind of golden ticket to the governor's office? Of course not. But my experience defines me. In this campaign and as governor of California, I will stay true to the values I was raised on and the people and the causes I've spent a lifetime fighting for and fighting with.
Chief among those values is support for organized labor, something that has already won her endorsements from local unions of carpenters, laborers, and domestic workers. Atkins was elected to the San Diego City Council in 2000, then the State Assembly and Senate. She's the only woman and the first person in 150 years to reach the highest rank of leadership in both chambers. She says she's negotiated landmark legislation on climate change, healthcare, and reproductive rights.
I've done the same on state budgets, in good time and bad, balancing 8 on-time budgets, building record reserves, and protecting the progress that we have made together.
Atkins would be the first openly gay and first female governor in the state's history. 3 other Democrats have already entered the race, with more likely to announce in the coming years. Atkins will be vacating her Senate seat at the end of the year. That leaves her plenty of time to fundraise and campaign ahead of the primary in 2026. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Nearly 30% of the U.S. population is under winter weather alerts nationwide. Major cities in the Northeast are bracing for more snow this weekend, which could make for dangerous travel. Ivan Rodriguez brings us the latest.
Watch your stop right here, big one. American Airlines passengers deplaned with the help of firefighters on Thursday after this aircraft slid off a snowy taxiway in Rochester, New York. Just one example of the potentially dangerous travel conditions expected in the Northeast this weekend. Extreme weather conditions have killed at least 58 people across 10 states in the last week. Major cities in the Northeast are expecting heavy snow in the coming days, with Philadelphia preparing for its first major snowstorm in 2 years. Workers there trying to mitigate slick streets with salt.
The ice didn't melt on them, even though we treated it. So we're out there treating it again, and we'll continue treating it.
On the West Coast, Oregon is under a state of emergency due to the ongoing severe ice storm. Oregonians aren't the only ones suffering. Another blast of cold air is sending temperatures into a tailspin, with wind chill alerts stretching from the U.S.-Canada border to northern Florida. Meanwhile, FEMA is changing the way it responds to natural disasters, announcing an immediate $750 in assistance to people impacted by extreme weather, which can include storms, hurricanes, and tornadoes. The overhaul of FEMA's system comes after years of criticism that disaster survivors have to jump through hoops to access assistance. These changes will take effect in March. Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
Well, things are turning wet here across the region. We're going to be tracking out when those rounds of rain are going to start to make their way into the region. How much rain are we expecting? Well, we could see upwards to a few inches across parts of SoCal. We'll have that forecast for you and when we'll start to dry out coming up.
California State University officials presented their case today to try to avert a system-wide faculty strike scheduled to begin Monday. The CSU's contract negotiations have stalled with the 29,000 members of the California Faculty Association. Among other demands, the union wants a 12% pay raise for members who include professors, librarians, counselors, and coaches. CFA leaders claim the university system can use millions of dollars from its reserves to pay higher salaries. The chancellor and other administrators fought back this afternoon during a virtual press conference.
One-time funds such as reserves cannot be used for ongoing recurring expenses like salaries. Any statement that it would be appropriate or responsible for the CSU to use reserves of any kind to pay salaries is another example of misinformation.
Chancellor Mildred Garcia also said university negotiators are ready to go back to the table with the CFA this weekend to stop the strike, which is scheduled to run Monday through Friday on 23 campuses. Union leaders have said the strike will happen, and they will be joined by members of the Teamsters. The U.S. Supreme Court will take up a major case about homeless encampments on the West Coast. As Chula Vista debates its own next steps on homelessness, KPBS reporter Corey Suzuki says that case is taking center stage.
The question at the center of the case is whether it's unconstitutional for a city to ban people from camping on public property if they have nowhere else to sleep. In 2018, a federal appeals court said yes, bans like that are unconstitutional. But the Supreme Court could overrule that decision later this year. The debate has taken center stage in Chula Vista. The county's second largest city is still deciding how to regulate homelessness. Community advocate Sebastian Martinez says bans should be unconstitutional. He says the 2018 ruling has forced cities to add more resources for unhoused people.
If you look at a city, for example, like, Chula Vista, I don't know that you'd see any projects related to creating shelter for unhoused people were it not for rulings like that.
The debate in Chula Vista has also drawn in top law enforcement officials, like District Attorney Summer Steffen. At a recent city council meeting, she argued that the 2018 ruling should be overturned.
Somebody should not be on the street, and the person should also have opportunities to live decently in safe shelter and housing. But legally, the two should not be combined.
The Chula Vista City Council plans to continue discussion in the coming weeks. The Supreme Court is expected to start hearing its case in April. Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
San Diego is a leader among cities that are updating their zoning laws to allow for more housing. But most of the new homes being built are studios and one-bedroom apartments. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says there's a growing movement to make family-size apartments easier to build with a simple change to the building code.
Between this building and here will be a small courtyard that will become a shared courtyard for those who live here, as well as the 7 families in this unit here.
David Pearson is showing me around the backyard of a house in San Diego's Grant Hill neighborhood. He's the architect on a small apartment building here that's set to break ground this summer.
This project is a good example of what we do. It's keeping the home up front. It's adding 7 units in the back. Those units are going to be studios and 2 bedrooms. The 2 bedrooms will have a den/office space that could be used even for a nursery and in a flexible way.
Designing buildings is complicated and every inch counts. Pearson says he was able to incorporate these family-sized apartments by designing the project with only one staircase. He says so-called single-stair buildings offer architects more flexibility. Less of the building is taken up by hallways and staircases. That makes it easier to incorporate 2- and 3-bedroom apartments with windows on multiple sides.
So it's a nice light-filled unit that can rely less on artificial lighting. It can rely less on expensive mechanical equipment to heat and cool, because the residents of that home have just more control of how to open a window and create a nice breeze through the unit.
Here's the catch. In most of the United States, single-stair buildings cannot be taller than 3 stories. That makes them less attractive for home builders. They're incentivized to design apartments like hotels, with 2 staircases on opposite sides of the building connected by a long hallway. Pearson is part of a growing movement to bring the local and state building codes in line with Europe, Latin America, and Asia, where single-stair buildings can go up to 6 stories, sometimes taller.
My initial reaction was a bit of concern.
Toni Tosca is San Diego's fire marshal. He oversees building inspections to make sure they meet life and safety requirements. The 3-story limit on single-stair buildings emerged in the early 20th century as apartment fires were ravaging American cities. Building regulators wanted to ensure as residents were evacuating from a fire, firefighters could still get in.
People are going up there to effectively do rescue and fight fires and set up their operations. People are also coming out. So there's this, competing factor there. That's a huge concern for me.
At the same time, Tosca acknowledges fire prevention and suppression technology has advanced in leaps and bounds. California requires sprinkler systems in every new apartment building. Furniture has to be fire resistant. That's why Tosca is keeping an open mind.
Definitely housing is an important issue here in California, specifically in San Diego. As long as there's something that maintains that life safety aspect, we're all in support of it. But we just got to make sure that, it's done the right way.
The way that we modify zoning versus modify building code are two different animals.
Ed Mendoza is policy director for the Livable Communities Initiative, which is advocating for single-stair reform. It supported a law passed last year that directed the state fire marshal to do a study on the safety of single-stair apartment buildings. Mendoza says that study needs to look at real-world examples. He says Seattle legalized single-stair buildings up to 6 stories in the 1970s, and there's been no measurable trade-off on safety.
We want to argue for this type of reform in good faith. We don't want hearsay. We don't want anecdotes. We want facts. And hopefully the facts carry us through.
Mendoza and David Pearson met with an aide to San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria last year to discuss local single-stair reform. Pearson hopes city officials take the idea to heart.
I would like to see the city look at building code reform as a means to create, good, safe, designed family units that ultimately provide more freedom of choice for residents of San Diego to stay put in San Diego, not move out to the suburbs.
The statewide study on single-stair reform is due to be completed by the end of this year. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Biden cancels student debt for thousands of teachers, nurses, and other public service workers. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The days of letting a friend use your Costco card might be coming to an end. SDSU's Mira Kopik tells us why the chain is updating its rules on membership sharing in the Friday Business Report.
Well, just like Netflix, really reinforced the use of, sharing passwords. Costco is seeing since the pandemic, people sharing their membership. Now they started actually implementing one step, which is at the self-checkout lanes, they're asking people not only to, use the card, but show their ID so it matches the card. So what Costco said is they believe, it's not fair for non-Costco members to receive Costco member benefits. But what's really critical is this is all about dollars and cents. Costco at the end of 2022 had 66 million paid members. These members generated over $4 billion in membership fees. So if they can even generate 10% more new members, that would generate between $350 and $500 million in new revenue for Costco. That's why they're cracking down on this.
Despite flaring tensions in the Middle East and historic winter weather here at home, gas prices in the U.S. continue to hold steady, at least for now. Will weather woes and international crises hit the oil markets and your wallets? Well, Mike Valerio breaks it down.
Historic cold and deadly winter weather taking a toll on oil production in the U.S.
There can be unexpected outages caused by the freezing temperatures. There can be power losses. Pipelines that deliver natural gas to refineries can freeze. And so we have seen several major refineries in Texas shut down because of the extremely cold weather.
In the Middle East, critical shipping lanes disrupted by attacks on vessels by Iran-backed Houthi militants from Yemen in retaliation, they say, for the war in Gaza.
What's happening in the Red Sea with the Houthi militants has driven up oil prices as many vessels have been avoiding the Red Sea. That's driving up transit time.
Yet, despite these cascading crises, gas gas prices across America are holding relatively steady in the low $3 range for a gallon, according to AAA.
It stands at $3.09 a gallon. That price still considerably lower, about 29 cents lower than what we were paying last year.
Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan says overall global demand for oil is down, and a dramatic shift to above average temperatures in the U.S. next week could counter any impact of recent refinery shutdowns, keeping prices steady.
But some pain at the pump may be in the forecast as winter starts to loosen its grip next month. The national average will begin its seasonal rise, and escalating tensions overseas may finally hit wallets here at home.
If oil production eventually is impacted, then these geopolitical tensions certainly could be more impactful in the weeks and months ahead.
In Los Angeles, I'm Mike Valerio.
Meanwhile, here in San Diego County, the average price of regular self-serve gas is just under $4.59. According to AAA, that's the lowest amount since February of 2023, nearly a year. The price has dropped for the 12th consecutive day. It's 9.2 cents less than it was a week ago and 17.2 cents less than 1 month ago. The Old Point Loma lighthouse has sat atop a high peak for 169 years, so it's understandable that it needs some repair and renovation right now and then. The iconic building is closed for repairs right now. KPBS reporter John Carroll shows us the work being done to make sure it survives for years to come.
When the lighthouse opened, California had only been a state for 5 years. From 1855 until it was decommissioned in 1891, it shone a bright light out onto the Pacific, warning ships away from the rocky shores of Point Loma.
It was one of the first original 8 lighthouses built on the west coast of the United States.
As the program manager for interpretation, education, and volunteers at Cabrillo National Monument, it's part of Amanda Gossard's job to know a lot about this old lighthouse.
It was looking pretty sad when the National Park Service decided to preserve it in 1913.
The lighthouse is in a challenging environment, at least when it comes to Southern California. So maintenance and repairs are a fairly regular occurrence.
We do everything from carpentry, masonry, plaster, so a lot of different trades.
Larry Waldrop leads a specialized crew from the National Park Service.
We're currently working on the interior of the lighthouse.
They've removed paint from the walls surrounding the spiral staircase after finding that the kind of paint used trapped moisture and it was damaging the plaster.
Doing some patching and then doing some repainting with a more traditional paint, and that'll breathe better.
A couple of months ago, another Park Service crew was here doing work around the windows.
They would paint it to mimic white oak. And just over time, UV degradation, especially in the windows, it had become brittle and was cracked and was peeling off. So our crew came in and we redid all the faux graining on the interior.
Whether it's the parlor, the kitchen, or the 2 small bedrooms upstairs, this historic treasure demands a lot of upkeep. The lighthouse should be open for visitors again by this coming Wednesday, but there is still some fairly major maintenance to come. I'm told a National Park Service crew will be back in late spring or early summer, this time to paint the exterior of the old lighthouse with that vapor-permeable paint. At Cabrillo National Monument, John Carroll, KPBS News.
Well, health officials in San Diego and Los Angeles are warning raw oysters may have made hundreds of people sick. They say oysters were imported from Mexico and have been served at restaurants across the region since mid-December. The oysters have been linked to 200 cases of gastrointestinal illness. The FDA advises restaurants, retailers, and consumers not to sell or eat certain oysters. And you can find more information on FDA.gov.
Well, let's start you off with your weather headlines, what you need to know as we head into the weekend. If you do have any outdoor plans, well, you're certainly going to want the rain gear. Have the umbrella, have the rain jacket, because it's going to be wet at times as we are tracking weekend showers and even some mountain snow. Another heavier round in store for Monday, though we do start to dry out and we'll start to warm up by the middle of next week. As for tonight, we're talking about some low clouds there right along the coast and even a little bit further inland inland as well. So that's going to cause some problems with visibility. We're dropping down to a low of 55. As for tomorrow, we are talking about that rain starting to make its way into the region. Still pretty wet from Oceanside to San Diego, highs in the 60s. As for Ramona, 62. And we could even catch a few showers a little bit further inland through the mountains, and even Borrego Springs getting in on a shower or two closer towards the deserts. Weather alerts here Saturday morning through Sunday afternoon. We do have some problems there along the coast. We do have high surf advisories in effect. So, hey, some rough surf, but it's not going to be the best beach weekend anyways, as we are talking about some rain. Let's time this out for you. Let's start this off a little bit later on today. This is Friday around 10 p.m. Pacific time. That rain's starting to make its way across central California, but it's going to dive south as we do take a look overnight tonight into early Saturday. Starting to see some showers make their way on through. Even waking up Saturday morning, LA, you're seeing some rain. A little bit of a lull in the action, but I'm not going to rule out a stray shower or two in areas like San Diego, points east, but we are tracking another heavier round of rain. This is going to start to move in around 2 p.m. Pacific time there. And as we head into Saturday afternoon, we aren't done with the rain quite yet. We're still talking about a few stray showers making their way on through, even throughout early Sunday, and even areas a little bit higher in elevation could see some mountain snow as well. SoCal, we're talking 1 to 2 inches through Monday, so that's going to cause some problems there on the roads. You could run into some flooding. Rainy through Monday. Highs remaining in the 60s. Will start to dry out Tuesday, Wednesday. Further inland, a similar story. Highs going to be remaining in the 60s, though we will start to warm up Tuesday and Wednesday. For the mountains, we are talking about rain and could even see some snow mixed in there too Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Highs are rising back up to the mid-40s by next Wednesday. As for the deserts, a few passing showers throughout the weekend. Highs going to be doing a little bit of a roller coaster there, down to the low 60s Monday, back up to 71 by Tuesday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
The first ever rodeo in San Diego's Petco Park last weekend drew huge crowds of 45,000 people, but not everyone wanted to return. On Thursday, San Diego City Council member Kent Lee announced that he plans to introduce an ordinance to ban the event within city limits. Council member Lee says he's working with the city attorney's office to draft up the ordinance to present it to the Land Use and Housing Committee in the spring.
Recognizing that this is an opportunity to think about the humane treatment of animals moving forward. We don't believe that entertainment should be the justification when it comes to cruelty and the treatment of animals.
And the proposal is also backed by the San Diego Humane Society, who also opposed the rodeo when plans were announced last year. The San Diego Rodeo Alliance expressed disappointment with the proposed ban. In a statement, the group says it is a direct attack against cultural heritage and indigenous traditions. Well, Comic-Con Museum just extended the run of its Stan Lee exhibit to April. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando previews the new additions to the collection.
Michael Uslan speaks in comic book exclamations.
Amazing, fantastic, incredible, uncanny.
So it's fitting that he's curating the Comic-Con Museum exhibit, Excelsior, the life and legacy of Stan Lee.
Stan was inarguably the most important editor and writer and co-creator of comic books and comic book superheroes in history. He and his co-creators, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, and many of the other members of the Marvel bullpen, actually have created our modern-day mythology. The ancient gods of Greece, Rome, Egypt all still exist, except today, thanks to Stan and the group, they wear spandex and capes.
You can see the origins of some of that mythology in Uslan's new Curator Corner.
We have found absolutely historic pieces of original artwork, some of which I didn't even know were still in existence.
That's because comic books were once deemed as disposable as yesterday's newspaper.
They were looked down upon by society. It was considered the bottom rung. Starting in the mid-1950s, there was a public outcry in America against comic books. I mean, comic books were being burned. Reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s. And these artists had to endure that.
Now, comic books are recognized as a legitimate and valued art form. Comic-Con Museum is celebrating 4 new pieces in its Curator Corner.
And I have to start with what to me is like looking at the Mona Lisa of the comic book world. It is an original page of Jack Kirby art from 1963 from X-Men #1. So that's my wow item for starters. Second is something that is incredible because it is the one and only issue of a comic book. It was Iron Man and Submariner, #1 and only. In addition, we've located the original artwork to the cover of The Inhumans #1 and The Invaders #1. Now, The Invaders was a golden age group of superheroes, and when I say golden age, I'm talking about World War II.
As the late founder and editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, Lee helped usher in a new generation of superheroes that readers could identify with because they dealt with such real-world issues as racism.
For me and for most of my friends and my kids' friends growing up, everybody really truly believes that these comic books helped mold our own sense of ethics and morality. What a gift to give to one generation of children after the next. And that's one of the important things that Stan and his co-creators accomplished that they really don't get enough credit for.
But you can appreciate the legacy of Lee and his co-creators with the newly expanded Comic-Con Museum exhibit. Enough said. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Has launched a new newsletter. North County Focus offers a quick recap of the big stories happening in North County, as well as a roundup of everything happening in the region. You can sign up for it at the link shown on your screen, kpbs.org/North County Focus, by the way. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, and that's kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.